don't care that it was Mason Rudolph instead of Aaron Rodgers out there. What the Chicago Bears defense did against the Pittsburgh Steelers was incredible, and Dennis Allen deserves a ton of credit.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. And on the show today, I want to recap this Chicago Bears victory over the Pittsburgh Steelers in what was both, a good enough offensive and defensive showing. But to me, the defense was the real story of this game, with everything they overcame and still played some pretty good football, all things considered. We'll talk about the offense too, where plenty of mistakes on that side of the ball that they themselves were able to help overcome. And then we'll check in on some of the other sort of strange, new, and different things about this team, including new left tackle, a difference in the running back rotation, the penalties coming back, and we should probably talk about Aaron Rodgers even just a little bit briefly today as well. Today's episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. This Bears defense came into the game with no business holding its ground. Whether it's Mason Rudolph or Aaron Rodgers, it doesn't make a particularly big difference to me. Not that Rodgers isn't the better quarterback there, but like either quarterback should have been able to have an easier time against this Bears defense, because we knew Bears pass rush has not been great this season. Regardless of who the quarterback was going to be, they're going to have some time to throw in this game. And then we know you're missing your top 3 linebackers in TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds, and Noah Sewell, all out for this game. So essentially, you were starting rookie 4th-round pick Ruben Hippolyte, and then, former Saints special teamer DeMarco Jackson as your 2 starting linebackers, with Amon Ogbongbemiga in there as the number 3. And then, of course, Hippolyte gets hurt in this game, so then Jackson and Ogbongbemiga are kind of your top 2 linebackers. That Carl Jones they called up from the practice squad, but you were really on your, 4th, 6th, and 7th linebackers on the depth chart there. And then at cornerback, the Bears don't activate Jalen Johnson or Kyler Gordon. And during this game, Tyreek Stevenson leaves with injuries again. So you've got Nashawn Wright and Nick McLeod out there, which again, we're talking 3rd and 4th string cornerbacks. I mean, you're missing 6 of your ideal healthy starters. Dio Dengbo's on injured reserve, so he's 1. Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, there's 3. And then your 3 linebackers is 6 different linebackers, or 6 different players hurt. Tyreek Stevenson makes it 7 in the middle of the game of starting caliber players that are not out there for your team. You got 5 of your ideal healthy starters. That's not a formula for a defense to have any kind of success, even against Mason Rudolph. I don't think we need to spend a lot of time getting into the nitty gritty of the Steelers and the offense with Rudolph or with Aaron Rodgers. But I don't think Mason Rudolph is a very good quarterback, but this is a first place Pittsburgh Steelers team that hasn't necessarily had to rely on prolific quarterbacking from Aaron Rodgers to win them games this season. We can have the Rodgers conversation a little bit later on in the podcast, but I'm not sure that that's the biggest difference in the world right now for against most quarterbacks should be able to take advantage of 5th and 6th linebackers and 4th and 5th cornerbacks. When you have DK Metcalf running against them, and tight ends like Jonnu Smith and these big bodies that they have in the Pittsburgh front with the 310-pound Darnell Washington. We've seen Pat Freiermuth be a player. The fact that this defense was able to play as well as they did really, I think, is a testament to Dennis Allen's coaching, so that when these linebackers and cornerbacks are out there off the bench, having not played any defensive snaps all season, or however plays out, that they weren't totally fish out of water. That, DeMarco Jackson wasn't great, didn't start well, at least kind of settled in a little bit as the game went on, but like they were prepared. They weren't stellar, but they weren't these giant holes that just completely fall apart and derail everything you want to do on defense. Like normally missing 6 or 7 of your starters would derail pretty much everything you want to do on defense. And the Bears defense absolutely held the Steelers offense down at points throughout this game. Like you might look and say, oh, well, they gave up 28 points, Lauren, but 7 of those points came on Caleb Williams being strip sacked in the end zone for a touchdown. And the Steelers defense scored that touchdown for the Steelers. So really, the Bears defense gave up 21 points in this game. And that's not also taking into account that the Bears defense generated 2 turnovers that set up Bears points. And the Bears offense also had 2 turnovers that put the Bears defense in difficult situations. But like you look over the course of this game, the defense found ways to win without giving up major points consistently. First drive of the game, Deshaun Wright interception, incredible play against DK Metcalf down the sideline, sets up a touchdown on that drive. Second drive for the defense, the Steelers have to go 13 plays to go 95 yards and take, 8 minutes off the clock to finally punch it in for a touchdown. The Bears made them earn every inch of that scoring drive. Third drive for the defense, then you get the fumble for a touchdown, so the defense isn't on the field until mid-second quarter. You stop them on the tush push on 4th and 1 for a huge turnover on downs that then leads to a Bears touchdown on the ensuing drive. And then the Steelers get some points before halftime there in the 2-minute drill. The defense, wasn't perfectly stellar on that drive. But don't get me wrong, it was not a dominant game, but kind of a trick play on the fake tush push to Gainwell where he breaks 3 for 56 yards. Like Steelers kind of had to, I don't want to say fluky, but they kind of had to go with the trickeration because standard offense wasn't working against the Bears defense in this game. And then, you get into the second half and you get another nice pass breakup by Deshaun Wright against Wilson down the sideline that could have been another impressive interception, but just a really nice pass breakup on 3rd down. Forces a punt. Sweat had a sack on that drive that kept them in 3rd and long that led to the pass breakup. And then the following drive is a 3-and-out where the run defense really steps up. And then, late in the game, the Bears make stops. The Steelers offense has an opportunity trailing by 10 to go down and drive. And first of all, it takes 17 plays for them to go and get a touchdown to bring it within 3. And then at the very end, they make a play, right? They force a punt on the previous drive because, they get pressure on Mason Rudolph, and penalties certainly help them out there. But, he can't complete the short passes that they need to get rolling because everything they were throwing was short in this game. Despite the Bears having major injuries at cornerback, Rudolph could not connect down the field. I think he completed 1 pass that traveled more than 10 yards in the air. Everything else was short and underneath, and that played right into a Bears team that could keep the play in front of them. And gave up a lot of completions. I mean, he was like, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I think he missed like 1 pass that was under 10 yards in this game. He completed like 12 or 15 of 16 plays. I don't remember exactly what the number is there, but like he was checking it down over and over and over again, and they get a lot of yards after catch. That's how the Steelers offense works. But like the Bears defense was ready for it. Like he took a couple of deep shots and got a couple of pass interference penalties, one by Nick McLeod that maybe saved the touchdown there, but their inability to push the ball downfield played right into the Bears' hands. And then Dennis Allen in the 4th quarter really dialing up the blitz a bit more down the stretch. It made Mason Rudolph uncomfortable. It forces a couple of incompletions on that drive, and then a batted pass at the end by Jaquan Brisker coming in on a blitz. And it was just really good coaching for these players to be ready in spite of all of the injuries so concentrated at any one position. But to hold them down to 21 points on defense and really 7 of those points coming on kind of a trick play, tush push type of thing. And the other 2 touchdown drives had to be 13 and 17 play drives. This defense made the Steelers absolutely earn it, even when there were plenty of times throughout this game where the Bears offense wasn't doing them that many favors. The offense found a way to overcome some of their own mistakes and get some more points on the board, but definitely an up and down performance from Caleb Williams. We'll take a look at how the young quarterback performed and what they got and didn't get out of that side of the ball next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by PrizePicks. The holiday season is one of the best times for sports. Bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes, and it's happening all at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy sports. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stat projections, lock in your lineup, and you're in the game. It's fast, simple, and a lot of fun. So you could pick more or less on Caleb Williams' passing yards, or Steph Curry's three-point shots. You can go across sports, across games, however you want to play, you can cash in with PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use our promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. I think it'd be too strong to say Caleb Williams had a bad game. I don't believe Caleb Williams had a bad game. I don't know that he played particularly well, though, either. It was very up and down, and I think the good throws he made pretty well made up for the bad moments he had, and that kind of leaves me at a net neutral, like kind of a 0 even kind of grade, that isn't good, but isn't horrible, but it's just kind of somewhere in between. But I think we saw perhaps the worst play of Caleb Williams' career on the strip sack in the end zone. We saw a number of inaccurate throws throughout this game that was just missing receivers, even a little bit more often than we've seen in some other games. And that hurt them throughout this game. But it didn't help that the Bears couldn't get much going in the ground game either, that they weren't able to rely on that and kind of help Caleb Williams get into more rhythm or take some of that pressure off of Caleb Williams as the game went on. But I do think the defense forcing some of those stops and generating some turnovers helped mitigate some of that. And then Caleb did enough to put the offense in position to win the game. I certainly didn't think having a new left tackle in Ozzie Trapillo didn't help, but Trapillo did not play that poorly. We'll talk about the left tackle a little bit more in a minute there, but I think in the running game, that was a little bit more of a factor. And same thing when Jonah Jackson leaves with an eye injury for a little while. I think he came back in the third quarter, but missed about 20 plays in the second quarter. I think there's some disruption there too. It seemed like a lot of the pressure was coming from the right tackle spot from TJ Watt the couple of times that they did get home on Caleb. But I think ultimately, this is just some of the normal ups and downs of a young quarterback that, he still sometimes rushes throws and sails them a little better. Still sometimes puts them a little bit behind or a little bit in front. It seemed to be a very clear effort to attack the middle of the field. You look at Caleb Williams' passing charts from Next Gen Stats in this game, and the vast majority of it is between the numbers. There were 3 throws where you might remember when he's rolling out to his right and fires it to the right sideline. There were 2 to Rome Odunze. I don't think he caught either one. One of them got punched out as he was going out of bounds. The other one, he couldn't get the feet in bounds. Is that right? I just remember there being 2 at the sideline that he didn't catch either one, but had a chance to catch either one. But one didn't finish the catch. One couldn't stay in bounds. And then the third one was the final throw of the game on that third down play with under 2 minutes to go where he tried to fire it downfield. But those were the main throws to the sideline that we saw Caleb make. But vast majority of these plays were slants over the middle, dig, deeper in routes, or, some verticals up the seams there. But you'll notice on the chart, left sideline completely empty. He did not throw outside the numbers to the left at all. Worked the left seam and very middle of the field and the right seam quite a bit and a little bit of the right flat, but very concentrated in some specific areas against the Pittsburgh Steelers. You saw DJ Moore working a lot from the slot and having success there. And I think part of the reason why you don't see as much of the sidelines there is just not quite being on the same page as Odunze on a few of those. I think if those completions go through, then I think it's a slightly different story there. But this was about getting the ball with 7 targets to Moore up the seam, 5 to Loveland. A lot of those were over the middle. Burden working over the middle had 5 targets as well. It just seemed to be either intentional or that's where they were finding space in the matchups. So certainly, I don't think these Steelers inside linebackers are all that stellar. So maybe they figured we'd rather attack there than the likes of Joey Porter and Darius Slay on the outside. And, Jalen Ramsey is roaming around back there. So maybe they kind of felt like, hey, we'll take our advantages over the middle there. And to Caleb's credit, he hit some nice lasers over the middle of the field. The touchdown to Loveland was rifled in there nicely, but there were also some easy ones, like the DJ Moore touchdown was a defensive offsides free play, 4 verticals, wide open up the seam. It's not to say Caleb doesn't deserve any credit for still seeing it and getting the ball to it, but it's not like an impressive, wow, what a beautiful, beautiful throw from him. And you contrast that with leaving the pocket, running backwards in the end zone, getting corralled by TJ Watt, getting that arm clamped down, trying to still flick it anyway, fumble, touchdown, Steelers, free 7 points, backed up in the end zone. You just can't have those plays. I mean, I get young quarterback, whatever, but we're in week 12 of your second season. You got to outgrow those. Those look like rookie mistakes, rookie Caleb Williams moments. And I think, some of it's just like an overconfidence and feeling like he gets out of almost every sack that comes after him. So why would he assume any different on this particular play? But TJ Watt's probably a future Hall of Famer, right? I would assume a future Pro Football Hall of Famer. Then, it's kind of like the Max Crosby thing. Like, you can get away from Nick Herbig and, some of the lesser known guys, but the superstars are superstars for a reason. And I think Caleb also in that moment has to know better than if you're backed up in your own end zone, if you're going to leave the pocket, like going backwards and down and around is a lot more dangerous. Like that's maybe like a step up and go through, but you got to be more decisive and got to make a play there and can't hurt your team by literally gifting the opponent 7 points there. I just think the pocket presence wasn't great. The game situational awareness wasn't great either, but it doesn't help that they're not getting a ground game going. In the first half, DeAndre Swift has 6 carries for 12 yards, and Monunga has 5 for 16. Your running backs are under 3 yards per carry, and your scramble game and your wide receiver reverse game is about the only thing you're getting in the ground game. So then Caleb has to throw a little bit more because you're not. Maybe Ben Johnson should have stuck with it a little bit more and tried to push through that, but the ground game was not happening the way the Bears wanted it to, so it put more on Caleb Williams' shoulder to have to try and make some of these plays. And then, then you're missing, and then you're trying to force some stuff, and you're trying to make a play, especially when you're backed up at that point. And, it's still a tied game, so it's not like, oh my gosh, you have to do something. But the Steelers had just driven down and scored on a 95-yard touchdown drive. You're backed up, at your own 10-yard line, so it's like, all right, can we respond? And you respond by giving them 7 points. So, that kind of stuff was just inexcusable, and that he needed to make up for with the better throws we saw as the game went on. Because, generally, you look at the script of this game, if you will. The Bears go 3 and out to start, but second time they get the ball, they drive down and he hits DJ Moore on the whip route for the 5-yard touchdown throw there, where they got a pass interference call with Kmet, but they finally get something going on that second drive where they're still in the scripted plays. We've seen them start off hot, but then you get the fumble for a touchdown in the end zone. Bears get the ball back after that, and DeAndre Swift fumbles in a pile, and you have back-to-back drives ending in turnovers, and it feels like the sky is falling a little bit, but credit to Ben Johnson and company for getting things back on track. Caleb misses a few throws on the very next drive, but they go for it on 4th and 1. With Caleb does that scramble and that quarterback sweep. They get Luther Burden going in the running game. They get a little more creative on offense. He finally hits Rome Odunze on one of those, in-breaking dig routes deep, and that kind of sets up, the Colston Loveland touchdown there. They drive down again, 2-minute drill, set up the field goal. You're seeing some stuff they were a lot better in those middle 8 minutes than they had been in previous weeks, and that's something that Ben Johnson has talked a lot about, and so I think they deserve credit for the ways that they were able to make up for their shortcomings early in the game, and eventually, you get yourself to a point with a nice 10-point lead in the fourth quarter, and that's where your defense comes up clutch and makes those stops that you need, even when you're trying to slow down the clock and run the ball, but you're having a lot of trouble, so you're not giving your defense the time of possession. You're not keeping the Steelers off of the field the way you'd like to, but the defense comes up clutch to kind of help the offense over the top and overcome the mistakes the offense granted you. And I think that's how you sort of set up another one-score, nail-biting Bears victory that everyone keeps telling you is unsustainable, but they keep finding ways to do it. And okay, maybe the Mason Rudolph thing is part of that. But I do want to talk about, the quarterback situation for Pittsburgh, as well as some of the interesting decisions the Bears made with Ozzie Trapillo at left tackle, with the running back rotation looking very different. And also, we should probably talk about the penalties as one of those self-inflicted errors in this game. So we'll kind of tie up some of the loose ends from this Bears victory over the Steelers next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by Gametime. The NFL season has been super exciting, and there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. Imagine if you had been in Soldier Field for that Bears-Steelers game. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a huge hassle between online queues and login screens and the prices jumping up at checkout. It's really frustrating, but that's why I use Gametime. I've got the Gametime app on my phone because it gives the advantage back to fans. It's fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee, where you'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time with all fees included. So the price you see is the price you pay. I've used the Gametime app to go to Bears games, to go to basketball games, see comedians, go to concerts, theater events, you name it, they've got it all in the Gametime app. So download that Gametime app, create an account, and use our promo code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code Locked On NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Twice I've done that. I was a little bit worried about how Ozzie Trapillo would do thrown in at left tackle for his first career start at left tackle, and really the position he had struggled with in training camp in the preseason, fallen all the way out of the left tackle battle, unseated by Theo Benedict, and we wondered if he would be destined to just be a permanent right tackle, and that's all he would be able to do. But on first watch, at least, I thought he held up fine at left tackle. I'm curious to go back through the all-22, but pass protection, you weren't getting a ton of pressure from that blind side. Not that it was perfect and that he shut down Nick Herbig on every snap, but definitely not like a problem that was disrupting your offensive game plan. I think his run blocking, they weren't getting a ton of push on that left side, and I wonder if he had something to do with that, but it's also a pretty good Steelers defensive line and front seven, so I'm willing to chalk up some of the run struggles to Pittsburgh just being a better defense than some of the other defenses the Bears have played, especially in the last few weeks. That front in Pittsburgh has been playing particularly well. So I'm willing to give them some credit in that regard. But I thought Trapillo played well enough that you're like, yeah, if he has to start another game, he'll be okay. I mean, Eagles present another challenge up front that we'll have time to talk about all week here on the podcast. So there's always going to be some concern. And with any young player, there's going to be ups and downs. And this was definitely an up. But there's probably going to be some downs in there. But we didn't necessarily expect Theo Benedict's injury to be that severe. So we'll see who ends up starting on a short week with the Eagles on Friday. But I feel, at worst, equally good about Benedict and Trapillo. And it's not that means you feel super secure and comfortable with them, but you're like, okay, they can get by with either of those guys at the left tackle spot. And it certainly opens up more possibilities for the future where, when we think about 2026, for a while, I think we were just thinking of Trapillo as right tackle only. So then do you have to go out and get a left tackle, or do you move Darnell Wright to left tackle? But maybe this reopens the conversation that Trapillo could be your starting left tackle next year, or that he'll compete with Theo Benedict to be your starting left tackle next year. And we'll still got to see how the rest of the season plays out before we make any definitive decisions there. I have some similar question marks now at running back now too, where for the first time all season with DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai essentially fully healthy. I mean, Swift was on the injury report, but he was a full participant in both Thursday's and Friday's practice and did not have an injury designation. He wasn't questionable. He was just full go. So in theory, maybe he's not 100%, but he is game mid-season as close to 100% as he can be. And not only did Kyle Monangai have more carries than DeAndre Swift, 12-8, but he was more effective on those carries. But bigger picture, he played more snaps overall, too. Like, it wasn't just, Monangai's running the ball better, but Swift is still in on all those passing plays. No. I mean, Swift was in on passing plays, but Monangai was on the field played more total snaps throughout this game than DeAndre Swift. And while that doesn't mean Swift has now been benched for Kyle Monunga, I mean, I think there's probably some matchup-specific things about this team and this game in particular that maybe they felt like they wanted to run between the tackles a little bit more and a little bit more north-south, and that maybe the Steelers, strength on the edges and a corner might make sideline running a little bit more difficult, and maybe that's part of why we saw the discrepancy in how the two backs had success in the ground game. But that's something we got to keep an eye on moving forward. Because the only time we've seen Monunga pass Swift is when Swift was hurt. But if Swift is as healthy as you could expect at this point in the season, and Monunga gets more carries, has more successes, and it's on the field for more total plays, that doesn't feel like nothing. Maybe it's not something big, but it also isn't nothing. I think over the last handful of weeks, the split has usually been 60-40 Swift, right? Where Swift is getting 15 and Monunga is getting 10 carries. Something like that. But this was 12-8 Monunga. I'm no math major, but I think that's 66%. No, that wouldn't be right. I see I'm not a math major. Is that 60-40 directly? Because 12 out of 20 would be 6 out of 10. That is exactly 60-40 Monunga. Wow, that took me longer. Probably an embarrassing amount of time that took me to do the math in my head. But I'm still a little sick, so I'm going to use that as my excuse. So instead of being 60-40 Swift, it was 60-40 Monunga in this game. And that's maybe just a one-game thing for Pittsburgh, but we'll keep an eye on that one moving forward. There, I think we should also keep an eye on the penalties kind of rearing their ugly head again. Felt like the last couple of games, against the Minnesota Vikings and and the New York Giants, and even the Bengals a little bit before that, the penalties had started coming down for the Bears a little bit more. Against Minnesota, they got back up to 6, which is still more than you'd like, but not crazy amount. But against the Giants, they had 3 penalties for 25 yards. Against the Bengals, I guess it was 7 for 43, but it just felt like a little bit more consequential, some of the penalties in this game. It ended up being 7 for 83, right? There's a difference between 7 for 43 when it's little penalties and 7 for 83 when it's bigger penalties. So they got to keep working on getting that cleaned up. If I can run through them in my head mentally here, the 7 penalties, I think there were 2 on special teams that were like holdings. And then there was Caleb Williams' delay of game, a Darnell Wright holding, and there was one other one on offense. I can't remember what it was. And then on defense, 2 pass interferences on on Nashawn Wright and Nick McLeod. Austin Booker had a penalty, I think it was offsides, that was declined in the game. If there's one more offensive penalty, I'm not thinking off the top of my head. But it's not like a bunch of false starts. The offensive line I don't think had any penalties in this game. And so there's progress there, but it's still not enough. You still don't want to see penalties continue to be a problem for them in this game. But all in all, you'll absolutely take a Bears victory again, however it comes. They've won 8 out of their last 9 games. They're winning these football games. Sustainability my ass. It's working. They're finding ways to win. Even, people are going to take away, well, okay, you won this game, but you only won by 3 and Rodgers didn't play. But even Rodgers was not taking a lot of deep shots for this Steelers offense either. I mean, we talked to Chris Carter from Locked On Steelers on Thursday, and he talked about how, Mason Rudolph, if he played, he might be more inclined to throw deep than Rodgers, because Rodgers has been throwing short and quicker than Rudolph. That Rudolph would hold on to the ball a little bit longer and throw deeper. And I probably have gone too long without mentioning Montez Sweat. I think I mentioned Sweat briefly, but Montez Sweat was probably the player of the game for the Bears, getting those 2 sacks on Mason Rudolph, including a strip sack. Really nice to see him step up and make those plays. But I think Rodgers maybe gets rid of the ball a little bit quicker, and so those sacks are a little bit harder to come by. But I'm not sure that he's burning you deep any more than Mason Rudolph. Maybe he hits on a couple of the throws that Rudolph missed, but I'm not sure that that's necessarily the total difference in this game. He's much more contact avoidant. So if Dennis Allen was blitzing him more, maybe he isn't letting some of the longer plays develop, and he is throwing short a little bit more, and he is throwing it away a little bit more. So I'm not convinced that that was the pure and only difference of the game. Maybe it could be, because we know when Rodgers plays the Bears, he plays out of his mind, even if he hasn't been playing that well the last couple of weeks for Pittsburgh. But maybe against Chicago, all of a sudden, he plays great and they win the game. Who knows? But I'm not going to be too upset about, oh, no, they didn't get a chance to beat Rodgers. They won the game. Take the win. Enjoy the victory Monday. And make sure you come on back for a Tuesday episode of Locked On Bears tomorrow. Hit the subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're looking for a second listen, be sure to check out the Locked On NFL podcast because they put out 2 episodes every single day, keeping you up to date on all of the best stories all around the National Football League, breaking down the biggest games from Sunday, previewing Monday Night Football, and I co-host the Tuesday morning with Tyler Rowland as well, so you can check that out tomorrow. But first, make sure you come on back, make Locked On Bears your first listen once again for another opportunity to bear down.